offseason a little bit, and we're gonna say offense and defense, but I know it just says defense, but their offense is too. But we can start with the defense, but I think we started coming to this realization a little bit after the draft and kind of seeing who they got in free agency, because they made a lot of moves. I think the last time we saw them on national television, if you remember, Vish, Week 16, it was a Saturday game. It was Christmas, and Alvin Kamara scored 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
It was not really close. It was more about how many touchdowns can Alvin Kamara have, and Mike Zimmer in the front office took that very personally. They did not ever want to see something like that again. And just to start off, do you want to talk about their defense and just give me your overall thoughts on what they've done, Vish?
Yeah. So first, I thought their defensive line was lacking size last year. Well, they fixed that immediately first thing this offseason by getting Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce, 2 guys that are absolute beasts in the middle of defenses, and they're absolute run stuffers. Dalvin Tomlinson is just a beast. Like, if you want to talk about a big physical defensive tackle that stops the run, that is Dalvin Tomlinson. So they solved their first problem. Second problem, they had trouble getting to the quarterback last year. A lot of that had to do with Unique Ngakoue not working out and them trading him. The other part of it was that Danielle Hunter got hurt and Everson Griffin left. Guess who comes back next year? Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter, when we're going to talk about underrated edges, I'm sure that Danielle Hunter is definitely going to pop into the conversation. We're talking about a guy who perennially gets 10+ sacks and is perennially looked at, in my opinion, as one of the 7 or 8 best edge rushers in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. But people don't talk about, Danielle Hunter as much as a big-time player. I mean, you look at the playoff game that they won, Kirk Cousins' big playoff game, the one that he finally overcame that game, all of that. The best player on that Vikings team in that game against the Saints was Danielle Hunter. Mm-hmm. He absolutely dominated Larry Warford in that game when he was rushing inside on third downs. So that's going to help. 3, they have a phenomenal middle linebacker. Eric Kendricks is special. He is big time. He's another guy. When we talk about underrated, Eric Kendricks pops into that conversation because he's a guy that should be in the conversation for the best middle linebacker in the NFL. That's how good he is. And everybody, I think, acknowledges he's good, but how good? People just sleep on how good he is because he's right there to me with Fred Warner and Levante David and Darius Leonard and Bobby Wagner. Eric Kendricks is in the same category with those guys. Then you look at their secondary. I mean, Harrison Smith has maybe regressed a teeny bit, but he's like ageless because Harrison Smith is still a hell of a football player. So he's really good. Patrick Peterson, I think that Patrick Peterson is not the Patrick Peterson that can sit down and play man on the number 1 receiver the way he was doing in 2013 and 2014 and 2015 when he was maybe the best corner in the NFL, probably the best corner post Revis, but he's still really, really good. And Mike Zimmer, they play a lot of cover 2. They do a lot of different things from split safety, and he's going to be able to do that. So schematically, Mike Zimmer is going to help out Patrick Peterson. He's going to be good. And then the last name to watch out for, and he's a guy who played really well as a rookie for them, is Cam Dantzler. He played really well as a rookie. He was one of the few bright spots on a defense that really struggled last year. When you add all this talent back, and if his level of play stays the same, this Vikings defense is going to be one of the 10 best in the NFL. You add that to the fact that they can run the football. They're going to have a really good run game. They improve their offensive line. And Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins. He's a pretty good quarterback to go with 2 excellent receivers. Minnesota is really being slept on as a team that's actually very good. And I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. I do think they have a defined ceiling, but there's no doubt in my mind that they can make the playoffs and possibly win a playoff game.
Definitely. And I think I agreed with most of those points. Like, just going back to the first part of the D-line, so Michael Pierce actually opted out last year due to COVID, and that was supposed to be one of their big pickups. And now they have him back. They bring in Dalvin Tomlinson, who, as you mentioned, both these guys are excellent, against the run. And I think that's why I was hinting at with the Saints, they ran for 6 touchdowns, or Alvin Kamara did, and they get those 2 guys. They also get back Sheldon Richardson. He's coming back. They signed him. So that's 3 new D linemen. Danielle Hunter, who the last 2 seasons had 14.5 sacks, has dominated in the playoffs. He's coming back. That's 4 new defensive linemen that are all really good to great. just coming back, and that's only one position group. I think their linebackers are still going to be what they are. Eric Kendricks is a top 5 linebacker. Anthony Barr is really solid too. And then I think secondary is probably where they got the most upgrades at. Cornerback in general, Patrick Peterson, Rashad Breeland. They bring back Mackenzie Alexander after a year with the Bengals. They have Cam Dantzler. That's 4 dudes right there. And then Harrison Smith, I think you mentioned ageless. Like, I feel like he's just never going to not be good just due to how smart and intelligent he is. And then they also signed Xavier Woods. So I think when you think about teams that have turned over the most and upgraded the most on defense, they might be there from last year because their defense last year was not good. And that's very atypical. If you look at the Zimmer Vikings defense for the last 5 years, they've been top 5, I'd say probably 4 out of those 5 years, last year being the exception. And their third down defense has always been great. I think 2017, it was like one of the best in NFL history, considering how great they were. And then, yeah, like that's just their whole defense. And I don't know about you, but I think Zimmer he's not a top 5 coach, but I think he's in that upper echelon of top 10, 11 coaches where with this roster, I see no chance they don't make the playoffs, bearing a catastrophic injury or just overall choke job, which I guess is possible, but I would not be betting on it.
I agree with you. And then somebody mentioned Jeff Gladney. He's another guy. They drafted him in the end of the first round last year. He was actually the guy they took with the Brandon Ayuk trade. And so that's another person that's in their secondary. He was a little more up and down. I thought Dantzler was better as a rookie, but that's just another name. And you talked about it, right? Third down defense. It's because Zimmer is so creative at creating pressure, and he creates free pass rushing matchups for his pass rushers, whether it's Danielle Hunter or Griffin. The problem was last year they couldn't really cover anybody and they couldn't really rush the passer. Well, one part of that, both of those problems to me are pretty much solved. So I think that honestly the Zimmer defense is going to be really good next year. And stopping the run, I think, is the most important thing. If you look at Zimmer's defenses, the first part of his careers in Minnesota, they had a guy by the name of Linval Joseph that used to be a very impactful run stopper for them. And without Linval Joseph last year, we saw their lack of size up front. Pierce was supposed to be kind of that replacement. As you mentioned, he opted out. So he's kind of a free signing for them this year to go with Dalvin Tomlinson, who is one of the better run-stuffing defensive tackles in the NFL. I mean, the Giants used to stop the run with their front 4 last year of Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, and it was sometimes B.J. Hill, sometimes a few other people, but they just had a lot of size up front. That was the point. And now Minnesota has that. So I'm with you. I think you were the one that really has been bringing this up and driving this home since they signed Dalvin Tomlinson in March. You were like, dude, you're sleeping on Minnesota. Minnesota's going to be really good. So I'm glad we were able to talk about it because the more and more I look at it, I do look at Minnesota's defense and I say there's no way they're not one of the 10 best in the NFL.
Definitely. And I didn't even really touch on their offense, but they drafted 2 linemen in the first 2 rounds, which is just perennially their biggest weakness. You watch them in pass protection and you're surprised Kirk Cousins is still just happy to get out there. And it may be due to him making $30 million a year, but he just gets mauled, just dropping back more than probably 20, 25 times a game, mainly because they run a lot. But, yeah, I'm with you, and we'll see because they made a lot of additions. I think people are a little bit on Zimmer after the first couple of years. So some have even been saying that he might be on the hot seat, especially if he doesn't perform with the current roster that they have. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. I think they're clearly the number 2 team in the NFC North. I'd have Packers 1, them 2, and then Bears 3, Lions 4. But I think they are definitively ahead of the Bears, personally speaking. And I'm interested to see, will they live up to it? Because I expect them to be – I don't expect them to win to the division, but I think they could be a 5 or 6 seed pretty easily. I really do.
I agree. And if Rodgers doesn't play, I hate to be that person, but if Rodgers doesn't play, they're the best team in the NFC North.
They really could be. I mean, depending, unless Jordan Love or I guess Justin Fields just turn out to be a franchise quarterback, which you really wouldn't bank on someone making the first start. Yeah, I mean, it's the Vikings division to lose at that point.
I agree. This defense is going to be really good.
Definitely. So that is the Vikings defense, mainly defense. So Vish and I both think they are going to be. I think they'll be a top 8 unit, maybe even higher. Vish is probably in the same boat, somewhere around
Top 10,
there.
yeah.
I like them a lot. Tons of turnover for the good, meaning they're getting getting more talented people as opposed to losing their entire defense. So yeah,